top plate, where I'm documenting the build of my RANS S21 Outbound plane. In this episode, I get started working on the boot cowl, which several have said they had difficulty with. Mine went pretty well. I did find an error in the manual, which is near the end of this episode, and I did get a little frustrated. I did edit the content a little bit, but I did decide to leave the content in, as I thought it might have interest to other builders, and also point out some of the goods and the bads as well in the build. So with that, let's get started working on that boot cowl. The next step we're going to move on to is installing the boot cowl, and in the text page it's page 94, but you've got to go to a couple different places in the parts manual. This also includes the floorboard installation, which is 0901 and 0902 in the parts. And then the boot cowl is 10E01 and 10E02 in the parts to get the boot cowl. And then you've got a figure for your stiffeners, which is 10E07. So once again, you got to kind of move around the parts manual and get and the text manuals and get a couple different pages out to get started. The first thing is to make sure that your strut attachment is drilled out to 7/16. They tell you to start at 3/8, go up to 7/16. I think we already did that because I put my 7/16 bolt in there to test fit it, and it fits fine. And for some reason, I remember drilling that out before. But if not, you got to make sure that that strut attachment is drilled out to a 7/16. And that bolt is on the end of my strut. That's where I found it. The next step was to get all my boot cowl parts. This is a stainless steel firewall that comes in 3 pieces. There's stainless steel rivets, aluminum rivets, Avex rivets, again, a whole collection of different rivets. Some small brass washers, which are kind of interesting. There's a little subset here that shows that this firewall is held together and that you put a little brass washer on the side of the rivet. So you got to make sure you don't miss that. There's also some straps that they were in 3 different places, so I had to dig around and find the boot cowl straps, uppers, lowers, lefts, rights, etc. Skins and bottom skins, those are all set. And then I did have to order, I ordered some 2000 degree caulk to caulk this seam. Some people have and some haven't, but it seems to make a lot of sense. If you got a fire in the engine, you want something strong enough to withstand the heat and not send fumes or flames into the cockpit. So I'm going with a 2000 degree sealant. On the other side is also recommended a spray bed liner, truck bed liner. I had to order that, so some of that's on order. So I've got things laid out, and I think at this point I just got to wait for my materials to come and then start putting them together. Okay, I'm going to rivet my stainless steel firewall. It's in 3 pieces. There's a row of rivets down the middle. I'm going to run a bead of fire retardant sealant down, a small bead down the line here before I put the pieces together. This is tested to 1000 degrees. The manual doesn't call for it. I've seen others not use it, and I've seen some put Pro Seal and stuff in. My worry about the Pro Seal or something else is that it might have a toxic fume or something if it's exposed to an engine fire. This is at least rated to 1000 degrees. A lot of the construction sealant used in house construction really isn't intended for engine fires. Houses don't burn as hot as engines. I think they're like 600-700 degrees. Engine fires get real hot. I couldn't find the 2000 degree available. 2 or 3 websites were all out of stock. So considering that the manual doesn't call for it, a lot of builders aren't using it. I think 1000 degree sealant is better than none at all. So that's my strategy. I have got my firewall riveted together. I did put that fire retardant sealant in between and cleaned it up with some acetone to clean it up. So the bead is underneath the 2 layers of the stainless steel firewall. Then the manual says to pin your firewall up to the frame using 5/16 bolts. Well, there's no 5/16 bolts in the parts list that I could see. So I just found some 5/16 bolts to pin it, pin it up. And I think the next step is we're going to match drill some of the holes on the back side, on the inside of it. Okay, I've drilled out the number 30 holes, clecoed the firewall to the frame. Now it says to deburr, clean, and spray the truck bed liner on the inside. And of course, you've got to prep the stainless steel first. I'll probably apply primer. Primer is going to adhere much better to a metal than truck bed liner, and then I'll put the truck bed liner on the primer. My firewall is ready for the bed liner spray. It's been primed. Painting is probably one of my weak skill sets, one of many. But what I do in my preparation is I do clean the surface first with acetone. That gets off all the fingerprints with the oil, which would keep the paint from being applied. It gets off the glue from the stickers, and it just cleans up the metal. Then I sand it down with a very fine grit sandpaper. I don't have a piece with me, so I'm not going to quote what it is, but it's a fine grit, and put very, very light scratches or sanding into it. Then I clean it one more time because it gets all the dust off it, and that's how I prep it. Then I use that rattle can zinc phosphate primer, and I put a one coat, fairly thin coat. It's not a heavy coat, and then that sets, and then that's what I'll put my bed liner on. Okay, the firewall is dried with the bed liner application, and the next step is to pin it back up and cleco it. Then you set your bottom skin in, your boot cowl bottom skin, and you center it. It goes back to this last strip, but basically your centering and your lining is done from the flange in the front. You get it flush with your front, and you center it between your rivet holes and set it in, and then you're going to you're going to match drill your cleco holes and cleco as you go and get the bottom skin. The next step is to cut these 4 angle supports that go here. They give you a diagram, and you're going to match drill them. And then you got to cut a notch out. Where's my notch? Here's my notch. For the rudder pedal assembly. So I have got one already in. As you can see, it's kind of running down this side. This one is going to go in underneath that rudder pedal assembly, and it slides underneath these tabs. The diagram shows it flush here, and then you're just going to match drill into these, and then you're actually going to drill additional holes. So there's 4 of them that go in the bottom skin. The next step is they have you drill holes every 2 inches along this angle brace through the floorboard and cleco into place. The next step is to lay the floorboard in, and the manual says to mark where the floorboard flange comes in contact with the stringer or the angle, and then cut the material away. But it looks like it's already been done. Here's where the floorboard flange comes in contact, and this section has already been cut out, and so it's free and clear of that stringer. So I'm assuming in a later design they've decided to cut this out for you. So I'll keep moving forward. I was a little confused on this next step. It says apply masking tape to the Station 2 door opening tube for a trim reference for the side panels of the boot cowl. Draw a line on the tape where the center line is on the side of the tube. So I'm thinking, what is the Station 2 door opening tube? So I was thinking, is this the door opening tube? Well, this is a tube. So I did watch some videos. So on this tube where your door is going to close, this is the Station 2 tube. So they say apply some masking tape and then do a center line down the masking tape. For this next step, I'm going to just have to kind of explain what I'm doing and then do it, because I need both hands to do it. They have you attach the side cowling skin. There's one number 40 cleco hole that's pre-drilled that goes into your firewall. Then from there, this whole thing moves around. I've got it just barely clamped here. But here's your line on the tape. Here are these cage tabs that you have to attach it to. And then importantly, you got to get this thing wrapped around. I don't know what I'm videoing here. You got to get it wrapped around to get those holes on the bottom. So everything kind of moves, and you got to clamp. And then once you're sure, you're going to transfer drill. So I've got to do the moving and the clamping and making sure the whole thing wraps around. I've heard a couple builders say this is a difficult struggle, and if you don't get it tight and wrapped, you don't get enough skin to come around and catch these holes here. So I don't want to have to do this twice, so measure 3 times and cleco once. I've got, they say lining up with your longeron is important, and I feel I've got it lined up here. I'm right along my line here, maybe just a tiny bit more back. What I'm disappointed at is to see this kind of drop down. It's not parallel with this bar, but once you lock this in and you line this line up and you get your longeron lined up, you don't have an option but to leave it where it is. So I've got it certainly above these tabs. I've got to assume the other skin's going to come down and lock in there. So having this parallel with this bar is not something I guess I should be shooting for, because it's not going to happen that way. The next step is to put in 2 skin stiffeners. There's one here, one up top. They fit underneath the tabs, between the tabs and the skin. You match drill them to the tabs, and then you put a hole every 2 inches like you did before, and then you cut a little notch out here for the separation to the tube, and you just match drill them in. The side boot cowl skins are clecoed on. There's a lot of match drilling to floorboards and skins that you've got to catch up with and cleco as you go. The next step is they're having you put on the panel frame. You're going to cleco that to a tab here, and then you've got the panel that they asked to cleco on to keep everything straight. Well, I'm going to have to do a little adjustment. I've trimmed the side of the frame a little bit just to get that number 40 cleco in there. As I come over here, it's still not coming back because, if I can get a picture of it in here, that weld, the weld is still too fat. So if I trim more off the off the frame to get it past the weld, that number 40 hole is not going to get lined up. So I am going to trim it, and I'm going to re-drill another number 40 because there's no way it's going to get into that hole back there. It's off to the left too far. So it looks like the frame is maybe just a fraction short, or the hole drill in the panel frame is off a little bit. But either way, it'll work. I'll trim it out. That'll let that fit in here, and then I'll drill a new hole. You can see I had to make a pretty good cut in here in order to get around that weld. We'll see how that fits, and I believe my new hole is going to be in here, but we'll see if this will fit this way. Oh, lordy, lordy. Once again, some confusion. I'll show you what I did. I'm going to keep moving. I looked at some videos, didn't get clarity on it. You go to number 18. It says, cleco the instrument panel frame to the forward side of the tabs and refer to figure 10E8. So you come here and you see that there are these lower tabs. And then it says, cleco the instrument panel to the panel frame. This will help hold the frame straight. And there's no picture of the panel being clecoed here. So you come up here, and I've clecoed about 4 on the top, but you've got your frame clecos here holding the frame on, and there's no hole here. I'm not going to drill because they don't tell me to drill anything, and I don't know if I'm supposed to. I can't put this cleco in the other way because there's material back here that's not going to allow me to put a cleco back here. So I've got the frame kind of clecoed to the top and angled out. Okay, I've made a decision. I'm going to take the frame off, and I'm going to match drill this hole so that the panel will cleco to the frame. It doesn't say to do that, but I've got to believe, because this is a cage gusset, that this is going to be a major attach point of this panel. So it's going to probably have to be match drilled. I say probably, I'm assuming it's got to be match drilled anyways. So that'll at least get the panel onto the frame, and get it clecoed into the cage gusset. The match drilling of these small holes, number 40s, worked. The frame is on the forward side of that gusset. The panel is on the inside of the gusset. And it is clecoed on. They say to cleco the panel onto the frame, so that's the way it is now. I'm assuming that's what you had to do. I can't think of any other way to do it. So we'll move forward from here. Okay, this is take 2 of this. This should be my softer and gentler response. After reviewing the first one, I'm not sure I wanted to put that up. So here's my frustration. It's another manual mistake. I spent hours yesterday trying to figure this out and finally found a video from a builder from 6 months ago that pointed out the mistake in the manual. Item 22, which is our next step after clecoing the side, says to modify 1/5/8 wide boot cowl spacer strip to 30 inches in length. So I look on here for boot cowl spacer strips. The only two I have are the top and the side spacer strips. And they are 5/8 inches in width, but both of them are less than 30 inches. They're like 20 and 23 inches long. So I can't modify those to 30 inches. So I'm assuming there must be another spacer strip, because oftentimes the text manuals refer to a different parts page. So I went forward in the manual, went backwards in the manual, went to all the additional parts pages, went to the additional figures pages. I can't find anything about this strip. Then I searched my garage, I searched all my parts, I went through the Firewall forward section where I put stuff, looking for this 5/8 strip that is longer than 30 inches, because I've got to modify it to 30 inches. Then you've got this cowling attach strap bottom. They do show it in the parts manual, but as you go through the text all the way forward, there's nothing, no description, anything about attaching this. So you just have to use your own common sense of when you're going to put this together. I did edit out about 50% of the comments I had in this section out of respect for the build and the hard work that the RANS people do in delivering their products. But I do take this build with the mindset that I can't make a mistake, and that a mistake might kill me. So I do get frustrated when I find an error or errors in the manual that have been there for a while, sometimes more than 6 months, and they haven't been corrected. And the amount of hours that I spend researching to get clarity in order to move forward with the build and try and understand sometimes what they're saying when there is no way to make sense of an error in the manual. I do wish that the RANS folks would take a little more time and correct errors in the manual when they're pointed out, as I'm sure I'm not the only builder that's run into this problem. With that, I think I'm going to end the video here. It was a fairly short section. I put 18 hours in to complete this section. That brings my build to date to 637 hours. In the next video, I'll finish up the boot cowl and get started on the rudder pedals. So with that, thanks very much for watching. And remember, dream it, just build it. Thanks.